It used to be very common knowledge amongst those who looked into terrorism that terrorism was emanating out of Moscow. Here, for instance, is a report of the United States Senate Judiciary Committee back in 1976. It says, terroristic activity interlocks between communism and terrorism. Congressman Larry McDonald documented it through his Western Goals organization. It was common knowledge. Back in the party Congress that was led by Brezhnev, who was the head of the Soviet Union and invaded Afghanistan, he came out in a speech before the communist parties of Russia and basically said that the banner of Islam may lead into struggle for liberation. Bad translation of what he was trying to say was that we can, through the use of Islam, have communist revolutions. We'll just disguise them. The banner, in other words, will be Islam, but really behind the banner is going to be communism, run out of Moscow. Here is a book published not that long ago by Ian Pachepa, who was the head of an arm of the KGB out of Bulgaria and Romania and those areas. And he said in this book, he exposes the fact that he was in charge of sending thousands of agents into Muslim countries who were Muslims, but they were communists. And they were sent into these Muslim countries to destabilize them, change society, ingratiate themselves into government and all other aspects. And included in that, of course, were communist terrorist trainers. And he said that he was only one of many who did that. That over a time period, there was tens of thousands of these agents out of Russia and satellite countries sent into these Muslim countries like Iran and Iraq and Egypt and on and on and on, in order to change those countries into what Moscow wanted them to change into and form terrorist organizations. Also, we see the books put out by Anatoly Golitsyn, New Lies for Old, and Alexander Litvinenko, who also pointed out the fact that there were all sorts of initiatives out of Moscow to radicalize Islam. Litvinenko, as you remember in these broadcasts, is the man that exposed the fact that the second in command of al-Qaeda, al-Zawahiri, was a Russian asset, trained in Russia, who is now today the head of al-Qaeda after we assassinated Osama bin Laden. So the head of al-Qaeda is a Russian asset. So these sorts of things are not new for those of us who look at this. Even a report put out in January, about a year ago, of 2014 by the Eastern European Studies Center shows the fact of ties between the KGB, FSB, and GRU into these Islamic organizations. Now the GRU, for those of you who may not be familiar with that, the KGB evolved into the FSB. They are primarily internal inside the Russian Empire. The GRU is military and is involved in foreign intelligence. And so they operate pretty much outside the empire into America or wherever it happens to be, Japan or Brazil or what have you. And anyway, this report shows that you cannot separate the things that are coming out of Moscow and Islamic terrorism, that they're intertwined, there's too much evidence of this, etc. This is the man who invented modern terrorism. His name is Yury Andropov. He's the father of modern Islamic terrorism. He set up all the Islamic terrorist training camps. And he was also Gorbachev's mentor. This is the guy that Gorbachev learned, cut his teeth on, so to speak. Interestingly enough, in the last few years, Putin has put up several memorials to this man. You hear about memorials to Lenin and Stalin and that. Well, this communist KGB thug who rose to the top of the communist movement in Russia is Putin's idol. He just loves this man. Another one of the men that were involved in this was the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khomeini. When he went into Iran after the overthrow of the Shah, he was working with the French Communist Party. Those sorts of things were coming out early on. Today, it's all Islam. It's radical Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't care what label you put on it. You can call them Nazis or German extremists. It doesn't matter whether you're going to fight them or how you're going to fight them. You can call them Islamic extremists or whatever. It doesn't matter as long as you're fighting them. All of this business about what we identify these people as being is all subterfuge. For instance, it doesn't matter whether we call them Islamic extremists or not, when you're not talking about the communists that are behind them, have trained them, have armed them, and nobody is talking about it except a very few